All right. That seemed, welcome everybody. That seemed a little abrupt. Did it not seem abrupt to you? Welcome back, I'm Howard. James is still out of town. In fact, you'll be able to see James a little bit later on. We're gonna explain that. Ed's here, look at him. Eddie
Spaghetti.
Eddie Spaghetti. Straw hat, an old dirty hanky. Ed, I don't know if you look great today, by the way.
Well, thank you.
You seem a bit tired.
I'm a little congested. I'm a little
what's
congested.
What's going on with you?
Just, sinus issues.
Is it really?
Like, leaky nose.
Ed. Because here's the thing I know about Ed. He was out partying hardcore with these kids. You were over at your restaurant. And you were throwing back your, your booze.
And I bumped into on the ride home to Windsor, or to London last night, was the golf pro from the Hunt Club. You know Tim McKeever?
I don't know him. I know who he is, though.
Tim's a British guy.
Yeah?
And he's kind of he's a buddy.
Is he?
Yeah, I like the guy. And we had a chat, and he's kind of philosophical, so we talked and had a couple beers.
Beautiful. Yeah.
So we talked for two and a half hours.
Back to London?
Back to London, yeah.
I'm playing in a golf tournament at the London Hunt coming up in a couple months. It's a big invitational. Can't wait. Beautiful. Beautiful. I'm also going to London.
Do you have a caddy?
No, I do not, sir.
I should be your caddy.
Yes, you should.
Because I'm out there.
You're out there.
Hey.
I'm going to another course.
Bring in a caddy.
I'm going to another course near you called St. Thomas.
I know St. Thomas. That's where they play the early bird.
That's where I'm playing in the early bird. Play it every year.
Yeah, early bird gets the worm.
Sure. Sure does. Hey, investment nerds, lots of stuff to talk about today. At some point, we're going to get to the news. We're going to get to what's coming up. But anyway, so I want to start by saying thanks for having me back. I'm learning a lot. Appreciate your comments.
Yeah.
I've learned so much from Ed. On the show today, all sorts of different stuff. We're going to talk a little bit of some cannabis, some legalities.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. You guys are just throwing that up. Fine. Headlines are coming up with Ricky. Later on, Benjamin Smith. Sweet Benny. He'll be with us. Steve Misener. Ed and Steve are going to talk about
interest rates.
Who?
Interest rates, economy, macro stuff.
I tried to repeat something you told me yesterday on my radio show today, and I was like, I don't think this is right. I don't think this is right. A little bit later on the show, Dave Berg from Strainprint. He'll be with us. A little bit later after that, we're going to talk about a it's significant, a political story that will have significance for you investors as it relates to the U.S. market. Lee Hanna, political science professor, and Rick Gillis, the president of Tinley Beverages, will be here as well. And of course, as always, we want to hear from you. You post your comments and all that stuff. Let me get to my computer. A Midas Letter live. All right. I guess we should do this now.
Yeah,
I
thought the thing that stood out today was the CannTrust missing.
Hold on.
Their quarter was, they were supposed to do 21 million revenue. They did 16.
Yeah.
Stock was down. I think it's down $2. It's a $13 stock, now around 11, or it was. Anyway, big drop, big miss.
Edman.
Big miss.
Edman. Ricky in the news. She's got that story. Then we're going to break it down.
All right.
It's like you just did the pre-news.
I just did pre-news.
Hey, why don't we do that? Since Ed's he's taking charge. I don't mind that. Here's Ricky Gerwitz with today's news.
Here are the headlines moving markets today. CannTrust Holdings Inc. reported a net loss of $13.55 million in its financial results for the fourth quarter ending on December 31st, 2018. CannTrust reported record revenues over the same period of $16.2 million, a 132% increase from the fourth quarter of 2017. Some other Q4 highlights include achieving an active patient count increase to 58,000, up from 37,000 at the end of the prior year, an increase of 57%. The company also sold more than 3,000 kilograms of dried cannabis equivalent, a 4.5 times increase from 758 kilograms in the fourth quarter of 2017. Khiron Life Sciences Corp. Announced its participation in the newly formed National Cannabis Roundtable, a campaign aimed at reforming U.S. federal cannabis laws. The NCR will focus on advocating for a rational legal framework for cannabis reform in the U.S., with former Speaker of the House John Boehner serving as honorary chairman. Aurora Cannabis announced today that the company and its wholly owned subsidiary, CannyMed Therapeutics, have added product information numbers to 78 medical cannabis products to better facilitate and track insurance coverage for their Canadian patients. The products that received pins include dried flower, capsules, soft gels, topicals, and oils. Pins help employers and insurance companies classify and incorporate healthcare products into benefit coverage plans. Aphria Inc. announced that they will release their financial results for the fiscal third quarter and 9 months ending on February 28, 2019, on April 15th before market open. Newstrike Brands Limited is making a $5 million investment in Green Technologies, a manufacturer of cannabis vape hardware and technology. The investment by Newstrike strengthens the existing partnership between Newstrike's wholly owned subsidiary Up Cannabis and Green as both companies prepare for the legalization of cannabis oil vaping. Choom Holdings Inc. has signed a memorandum of understanding with Better Choice Company for the exclusive Canadian distribution rights to Better Choice's CBD Bonavita brand of products targeted for animal health and wellness. The Green Organic Dutchman Holdings Limited has announced that Hamilton City Council has voted to allow TGOD to operate its cannabis greenhouse in Ancaster, Ontario, upon confirmation of the settlement by the local Planning Appeal Tribunal. Harvest One Cannabis Inc., through its wholly owned subsidiary, Sadie Farm Limited, has entered into an agreement to become a supplier to Health House International Pty Limited. Health House International is a medicinal cannabis wholesale and distribution business based in Australia. Under the terms of the agreement, Harvest One will supply Health House with Sadie Farm capsules. The product will continue its availability in Australia, while expanding distribution to New Zealand and Asia where and when legal. Flower One Holdings Inc. announced the closing of a previously announced overnight marketed public offering of unsecured convertible debenture units of the company for aggregate gross proceeds of $50 million. In connection with the offering, the company issued a total of 50,000 debenture units at a price of $1,000 per debenture unit. The net proceeds received by the company from the offering are intended to be used for the payment of outstanding notes, ongoing construction, and development of its Nevada production facility. High Tide Inc. has been licensed to open its 11th Canna Cabana retail store located in Okotoks, Alberta. The Okotoks store is approved to sell smoking accessories and cannabis lifestyle products, while the temporary suspension of incremental cannabis retail licensing by Alberta Gaming, Liquor and Cannabis remains in effect. International Cannabrands Inc. has announced that its 51% subsidiary, La Vida Verde, has entered into a letter of intent with Driven Deliveries to distribute La Vida Verde's products throughout California. Liberty Health Sciences Inc. announced that it has entered into an in-license agreement with the Workshop for its patented and patent-pending terpene technology. The Workshop is a scientific consulting group focused on terpene analysis and terpene-based formulations. And that's your news for today.
Okay, now there was Ricky, amazing work, talking about this story. You jumped into it.
Yeah.
Because it really is, and I can see a lot of people are excited. Interested to know what's going on. So they report a loss. Fourth quarter ended December 31st. So let's go through what Ricky was talking about, what you were talking about, how it's going to affect it.
One of my concerns is this peculiar to this company, or is this peculiar to the industry? And as we get more and more results coming out, and everybody's got a report by the end of March. So we'll see. We'll see. Every day's a little bit more of the puzzles being revealed.
Well, this morning I was talking about something you were saying yesterday about the world's. Well, what's happening with you? Just. I'm trying to have a serious conversation, Ed.
You should have said, Ed, you're going down in my world.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Ed, I try to remember something you said about the world debt. And we got a lot of money out there, a lot of it's not doing anything. Now, I'm not saying that CannTrust Holdings report is the harbinger of something else, but is it? Is this just one of many dominoes that may or may not fall?
I don't know. That's what we're trying to find out. What were you trying to tell me there, young fella?
Well, there's now everyone's running around.
Yeah,
Things got very Very unprofessional, very quickly.
Okay.
Oh, by the way, another thing I want to talk about, Charlotte's Web. Charlotte's Web.
Earnings out tonight.
Earnings are due later today.
4 o'clock.
All right. What does Ben say?
And so is Khiron, 4 o'clock.
Oh, yeah? Let's say hello to the Midas Letter's chief, financial writer, Benjamin A. Smith. What's the A stand for, Ben?
That's my middle name. Middle name is Aries.
Did you say Aries?
Yeah, Aries.
Interesting. My middle name is Alan, in case you're curious.
There we go. I guess we both have, A for initials, middle name.
What's your middle name, Ed?
Richard.
Cool. All right, let's get right to this. Benjamin, you heard us talking about CannTrust earnings hitting the stock hard. It's what are your thoughts? Because I know a lot of people are waiting to hear what you have to say about this.
Yeah, so CannTrust earnings, I think, delivered a little bit of a bombshell to the market, just because investors aren't used to CannTrust missing. Traditionally, they're one of the best performing stocks companies in terms of financial reporting. They usually hit their numbers. They usually do pretty well. I think the last financial report, Q3, that came out in November, they absolutely hit it out of the park. And even though the market had been trending down, it had been in the heart of the post-legalization selling, CannTrust, was up double figures, double digits that day on a percentage basis. So this came as a little bit of a surprise, especially if you look at the chart. You can see that there was no, front running in the stock. There was no pre-selling. So the stock had been trading near its, recent highs. So a lot of people, there's a lot of expectations baked into the cake. And unfortunately, they missed the revenue number by 4.5 million or thereabouts on the consensus basis. And their gross margins were nowhere near what analysts expected them to be. So you see the result today.
Was this a surprise to you when you saw this?
A little bit, because like I said, CannTrust usually, hits all their numbers. They usually meet, and last quarter they hit it out of the park, and generally they usually get a pretty good reaction, and they're known on the street and with investors for being a sound performer with their financial metrics. So this is the first time CannTrust has really taken a hit after a quarterly earnings report, and this was also their full year report. So I would say it was a little bit of a surprise, yes.
Okay, yesterday we talked a little bit about the HMMJ and U.S. stocks, kind of soft. You tell us now there's been a bit of a return, a bit of an uptick.
Yeah, well, the CannTrust news delivered a sort of a 1-2 punch coming off the heels of Cronos's downgrade yesterday. So the market, started off very weak this morning, but there's been a lot of buying, pretty impressive buying off the lows. Currently, HMMJ is only about 2% down on the day. It was a good 5% down to start. So investors are buying a lot of the baskets of stocks. They're taking this weakness to add to positions, which is pretty good. And that being said, HMMJ has faced some technical damage over yesterday, and we can't say that it's really strong over the past couple weeks. We won't be able to make that determination until it starts outperforming the market, the broad market indexes by 2 times or more when it turns around. That's when we can really say that the basket of Canadian marijuana stocks is really strong.
Okay, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Ed, but hello. But Ed is here with a question, and just be kind to Ed, because right now he's got a bit of a cold.
Yeah.
He may be hungover, and there's rumor that he may have contracted, I don't know, some syphilis, some old, I don't know what he's got. I don't know. He's old. It could be anything.
It could be anything. So the question I have, and I don't know if you've got the answer, Ben, but what happened to CannTrust a one-off, or is it more indicative,
right,
is it a bigger concern? Should investors be really paying attention to quarterly results this year, or because this is reporting season for, we got Charlotte's Web coming out at 4 o'clock, Khiron's coming out. And I don't know the answer, but we should pay attention here, right? Is
this part of a bigger picture? This is what I ask.
I haven't really gone into the report enough, the details enough to really make that determination. I think investors, what really matters to investors is to pay attention to the overall news flow in the sector instead of just individual stocks. So in the last, say, 2-3 weeks, we've had 4 individual stock downgrades based on valuation, and CannTrust missed their revenue numbers by a good 20% today. So none of this really is conducive to multiple expansion in the sector right now. So I think the Canadian MJ space really has to get through this sort of negative overall macro news cycle that it's experiencing to really move forward. And that's why you're seeing that the sector is not really keeping pace. It's underperforming the broad market indexes right now, and that's not really a place where you really want to be, because if the indexes roll over, then there's always a chance that cannabis could roll over by 2 or 3 times what the indexes are rolling over right now. So I think it's a tough period right now, and none of this should make investors lose focus of core positions for the future. But if you have discretionary capital, or if you're looking to put, to stake new positions in the market, I would say that, you could, in this environment, you could probably wait it out a little bit and see kind of what happens.
Later on, we're going to be talking to a professor from the Department of Political Science at Wright State University. Kind of on our next item that I wanted to talk to you about, which is the House Financial Services Committee voting in favor of moving safe banking through committee. Now, we'll talk to the professor about, the minutia of that in the States, but you say, and I think you're right, that this is the first of several steps to get the bill into law, which is a huge sector catalyst in the States and in Canada, is my question.
Yeah, I think most investors view this as being, a particularly big catalyst for the multi-state operators down south. But
right.
I would posit that it's also a big catalyst for, some of the tier 1 Canadian LPs with cash in the bank. For example, Canopy Growth, which still has a good $4 billion left from its Constellation Brands deal. It would allow them to perhaps purchase some MSOs and really move to operate down in the States. It does have that potential. So I don't think it's just limited to MSOs, although I think they're the primary catalyst lies there. So overall, this is just a huge catalyst overall. But today, with the vote getting through committee, we're seeing it's going to advance to the next stage. Investors have to realize, though, that this is a work in progress. It's very unlikely the Safe Banking Act will get passed, say, before Q4 2019. It could even linger into Q1, Q2 2019. So this vote today was a very big positive. It was expected, and because it was expected, and it's sort of a longer cycle thing, you didn't really see the market react too positively on the news, even though it is a very big positive. So I think people are just sort of getting ready for the news cycle, which is really going to gear up when it goes to congressional review, if it gets there, when it goes to the Senate, and that's when the big battles are going to take place.
Well, and that was sort of the last item, and you've just talked about the MSOs not reacting, really that robustly on the news because it's too far out. But I just want to ask, when you think about, we had all this run-up time to legalization, October of last year, and I'm assuming there'll be a similar, a couple of years out to an eye toward legalization. When that happens, and this could be a question for Ed as well, when that happens, is that U.S. marijuana market just going to swallow up the Canadian one? Anybody? Is that a dumb question? I don't know.
It's a difficult question.
Ben, why don't you answer that first?
Yeah, it's a difficult question. I think obviously the U.S. multi-state operators will be in a very good position at that point, because they'll be able to most likely go to U.S. exchanges. They'll be in a way better position to raise more capital. So they're going to be capitalized in most of the Canadian market. I do see big opportunity in this for the bigger LPs with capital, specifically Canopy Growth, because they have that big cash hoard, to really make a move down in the States as well, if they're allowed to. So I don't think it's limited to the MSOs, but I think overall they'll be in better position because they have the bigger markets. They'll be bringing in the bigger revenues, and at that point they'll be able to raise capital all over the place. So. Yeah, it has the potential for them to be, to gain a leadership position in the space, whereas, the tier 1 LPs are still considered the leaders right now. That may not always be the case, although there's a case to be made that Canopy Growth, Aurora Cannabis, and some of the high-end names here will always have a place at the table.
Well, and Ed, you would concur, I'm assuming. It's a difficult question. I mean, I think people have to start thinking about it, because news like this is an indication that the Americans, maybe with an eye toward our market, and the pressure, interestingly enough, coming from companies, not people. I'm sure there's pressure from people, but what do you think of that?
I look at the marijuana thing. The problem I have with the marijuana thing, and that's why I didn't put money into it, is because I didn't think there was a lot of barriers to entry. More and more people coming in makes the pie, the pieces of the pie, smaller, right?
Yeah, but it's only the biggest that can really make any. I know what you're saying. Lots of people in the space, but it really, as Ben was just saying, there's a few big companies that are controlling a big part of this market. And when the Americans, when that gold rush happens, there might be, wouldn't you say there'd be some opportunities?
Yeah. Well, I just look at the valuation, and I was talking to a guy, my buddy here, John, in the office, about the market cap of the public companies in Canada, the market cap, and I look at, the revenues that Kronos posted, which I thought were not that big relative to the market cap. Like, the company's valued at, it's priced for perfection going forward. It looks to me, and the revenues aren't that, they don't jump out at you.
All right.
And then you see CannTrust backing off. So, and we saw the sector gave some ground back here the last few days. I don't know if that's answering your question. All right. I don't know how this is all going to work out.
Well, listen, Ben, thank you very much. As always, I appreciate the pre-show stuff. Gives me stuff to read and learn about. And you have a great day. Congratulations on rocking the short sleeves here in late March. I like it.
All right, guys. We'll see you tomorrow.
All right. That's Ben.
Thanks, Ben.
Ben's a nice
Very
man.
knowledgeable guy.
Oh, yeah, very knowledgeable. Very knowledgeable, and he seems like a nice guy. All right. We got lots more to go. In a minute, I'll be joined in the studio by the president of Strainprint Technologies. But first, this.
Strainprint Technologies Limited is a Toronto-based cannabis data and analytics company providing enterprise-grade analytics and consumer solutions for the medical cannabis industry. The company manages the gathering and analysis of real-time cannabis consumption data and ranks specific strain efficacy against conditions and related symptoms. It also works with commercial producers and clinics to provide advanced intelligence and optimize operations and treatment recommendations. Strainprint can be embedded or integrated with most electronic medical records, point-of-sale, and seed-to-sale software systems. The Strainprint app is free to patients and can be downloaded from both the iOS App Store and Google Play Store.
All right, what a great opportunity to talk to someone that I've actually spoken to before. He is the CTO and president of Strainprint Technologies. Please say hello to Dave Berg. Dave, how are you,
Hey,
sir?
Howard, how you doing?
What a pleasure.
It's great to see you.
What a mitzvah.
Yes, a mitzvah.
That's what we say.
We get to come together.
We get to hang out.
It's special.
It is special.
It's beshared, as we were saying.
Well, Dave and I have some dealings with one another in another life. Dave, his company, full disclosure, I know you don't like to talk about that here on the show, but full disclosure, Dave and Strainprint are part of the Humble and Fred show. They are one of our sponsors, and we've had a relationship. And it's interesting, Dave, because it started the very first time I had somebody from Strain
A chart of CannTrust.
Okay, hey everybody. You can probably tell we're having some technical difficulties during that little segment there. So when we get it fixed, we have our best and brightest on it. That's not. We have the only people that are working here on it. Okay, we've got Connor, we got Donald, we got Simon, Ricky, other people, Suzanne, working on it. You got Ed. Ed's looking at his.
I got a chart.
Ed's looking at his charts.
You got a trust.
It's got charts.
Chart of trust.
And by the way, I didn't mean
TRST.
Say again.
You got a chart of trust up here.
Listen to me.
Yes, sir.
I didn't. May I? Yes. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, you and Benny, about the market going forward. But you start to look down the road and you think, well, if the Americans start to move toward legalization, and that may never happen. Whenever I think about the Americans making this legal, I think they'll never do that. There's too many Republicans that have staked their lives on it being a gateway drug to, to not loving the Lord.
I spoke to one of the top brokers in the country. He's the top. This guy is very good at what he does.
Yeah.
He's a big broker. Very big. He got into the marijuana game early. He's pretty well out of the Canadian marijuana deals. He's now focusing on the U.S.
Yeah.
He said, I said, I asked him a few questions. We had some time. He said, ask whatever you want. I said, I'm just curious, what do you think, who's going to be the next president? He said, Trump's going to be the next president because Trump will legalize marijuana. So they and I don't know if he's right.
I'd be surprised.
I know. It seems like, but
yeah, it seems
crazier
like
things that happen.
You think? Every time, I don't know about you guys, but if I may share this with you, every time I hear the words President Donald Trump, I'm like, what?
I know. It's hard to believe. It's hard to believe.
Is that really a thing that happened? So, what you're saying, I wouldn't be surprised. Listen, the right wing, the Republican Party of America, may not be in the mood to make marijuana legal for a variety of reasons, but because of the banking. This is what I meant. So now they got this, it came out of committee, marijuana banking bill.
Yeah.
Because of that gives me the idea that because of the banking and because of the companies and because of the money, maybe they'll make it legal, not just in individual states.
You know what? If he made it legal, I don't know. Would that, like, there's a lot of grassroots support for Donald Trump, in everywhere except for New York and L.A. and Chicago, right?
Theoretically.
Well, that's how it works, right? Yeah, you know what? If you would have said to me Donald Trump was going to be president of the United States, I would have said, that ain't going to happen. And I was watching that night, I thought, he's going to be president.
Yeah.
Whose name's on the Oval Office? Whose name? Donald Trump.
Do you remember a fellow named Ronald Reagan?
Yes, of course I do, yeah.
Okay.
Ronnie.
So, we're going to look at charts in a second. And when Ronald Reagan ran for president, there were a lot of people at that time went, there's no way, that guy used to be in those movies with the monkeys. Not the band, like Monkey.
Yeah.
Remember Bedtime for Bonzo or whatever?
Bonzo.
So I remember I was alive when Ronald Reagan became president. And so it's not that big a surprise. Some guy that was on TV and it pretends to be an investor became president.
Yeah.
So because there's money involved, this would be my supposition, at some point they're going to make it federally legal. Let's go to some charts now. Ed's going to chart you guys.
I want to put up the chart of trust.
Trust.
Just because that's the
CannTrust. Let's have a look at it.
We got to look here.
We can do that. We got the CannTrust Holdings.
We've got a one-year chart, and look at here, folks. I want to point out a couple things. We had a major top here, and I believe that was when it was legalized. Okay, when we legalized marijuana in the country, we had a major top. Then the whole thing fell apart till the end of the year. So that period here is extremely.
So that's October to December.
October to Christmas, yeah.
May I ask a question? On the other side of that, so on the run up the other way, this way, on that side, why didn't we get in then? To everything, Ed? Why didn't we do
why didn't we get in here?
Ed, why didn't we get in for a 10-banger?
Yeah.
What's it, a banger or a banger? Banger?
Well, it depends what you're doing. It could be a banger, it could be a bagger.
Is it a banger?
It's a.
How about
bagger.
a 10-bagger Vance? Why don't we do that?
I saw the movie.
Love that movie.
Yeah. So then we started off again when the markets took off in January.
Okay.
Okay. Look at this. Look at this. Okay. But now we've had a miss, and this high is not as high as this high. In other words, I'll just clear this here.
Well, no, before you clear it, I was going to say, tell me that doesn't look like a bunch of wieners all stuck together.
Well, that's why.
That's drawing dicks on the charts today.
Just call me.
That's the dick chart.
Okay, so this high much lower than this high. Okay.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, in other words, here we are now in the reality of making money, generating revenue.
Yes.
All these things
reporting earnings,
and we had a miss. We had a big gap here. Look at where the stock is, close to $11. So, is this? I look at if it's rolling over, maybe we had big volume today, the biggest volume in a year, right here, over 7 million shares today. Yeah, I'm just pointing out these things. I mean, look, if I was an investor in this, I'd be concerned.
Okay. Thanks for that, by the way.
Okay.
Thank you for drawing juvenile pictures of wieners on your chart today.
Yeah.
Very, very immature. And now back to this little chat with our friends at Strainprint Technologies. CTO and president of Strainprint Technologies. Please say hello to Dave Berg. Dave, how are you,
Hey,
sir?
Howard, how you doing?
What a pleasure.
It's great to see you.
What a mitzvah.
Yes, a mitzvah.
That's what we say.
We get to come together.
We get to hang out.
It's special.
It is special.
It's beshared, as we were saying.
Well, Dave and I have some dealings with one another in another life. Dave, his company, full disclosure, I know you don't like to talk about that here on the show, but full disclosure, Dave and Strainprint are part of the Humble and Fred show. They are one of our sponsors, and we've had a relationship. It's interesting, Dave, because it started the very first time I had somebody from Strainprint on was just as a guest.
Yeah.
And we were lucky enough that you guys decided our show might be something worth investing in. And now here we are talking about investment and the industry in general. But you've been at this for a long time. Maybe just explain a little bit about what Strainprint does.
Sure.
And where you guys are as a company.
Well, Strainprint started out as a medical journaling application that was on Android and iOS for patients that were looking to figure out what cannabis products worked best for their different medical situations. So we developed an app. We tracked 350 different medical conditions, 70 symptoms, and we tracked the way people interact relative to their medical condition and their symptoms and products that are available in the legal supply chain. So we're looking at the way people interact with products, and then that can be communicated to a physician, a supplier, or anyone else in the supply chain who wants to better understand the way patients are using cannabis within the human condition.
And to be clear, Strainprint's been around obviously prior to legalization. When there was a need for patients to avail themselves of their own, sort of do a little due diligence on your own, because there was a time, and that wasn't that long ago, where GPs in Ontario, they weren't handing out medical marijuana prescriptions. So a lot of patients were trying to find information from apps like Strainprint.
Yeah, well, that's exactly where the app started from. So Strainprint is a company of patients for patients. Right. So we originally started out looking for ways to better understand how to manage our own conditions. I use it to treat arthritis in my knees. I also have a young son that has Crohn's disease, so I'm always on a look for new ways to treat his condition. Right. Because the existing methods are quite invasive. Yes. So it was out of necessity that we kind of stumbled onto cannabis and realized there wasn't a lot of knowledge out there about the way it can be prescribed. And at that time, I came together with my partners, Andrew Muroff, who you've had discussions with before, Stephanie Karasik and Evan Karasik, and we formed a company with the goal of decoding what works for everyone, and that's kind of where we started. And it's been about 3 years now, and we have actually grown Strainprint from a mobile app into a full data and analytics organization that has the largest data set on medicinal use in the world.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about, because Andrew was on the show, and we did do a little background on, you know, what Strainprint is, what it stands for, why it's important. You were talking about Crohn's and arthritis. You know, that's one of the things, and I talked a little bit about this yesterday. You know, when legalization was floated, a lot of people were thinking, oh, giggle, giggle, now we can get high. But what I talked about this yesterday, and we've spoken about it, that the actual point of legalization is for companies like Strainprint and other companies to make the experience of medicating for medicinal purposes, and we're going to talk about opioids in a second, more available for the average person.
Yeah, well, I mean, what cannabis does is it affects everyone differently based on their situation. So we want people to be mindful of the way they medicate.
Right.
There's a lot of concern about impairment and the impact on someone's performance, and there's a stigma around that. So we want to be able to teach people how to be responsible in their choices, so that they're functional.
And the thing is, Dave, not every cannabis product is about getting high.
That's correct.
It's about medicating with non-psychotropic CBD. I want to talk about this. Last month, you guys announced a partnership with Cannabis at Work, the leading source for cannabis jobs in Canada, delivering recruitment services, online training, and HR consulting services to the cannabis industry. That's a whole other discussion, too, that your company, other companies, a lot of the companies we talk about here on Midas Letter that are trading, there's so many jobs in this sector now. There's so many opportunities that have opened up. So what's the deal with you and CAW?
Well, it's a couple of things. I think, first of all, the thing that I love about this industry is that everything that's old is new again.
Right.
And you're getting to see people from other industries with core expertise that were used in other ways, lending themselves now into cannabis. So it poses a unique challenge for people that are entering the workforce. They have a new lexicon they need to learn. They have new technologies that they have to interface with. And the ramp is quite high. And then there's also how do you use this in the workplace? So policies need to be created, awareness needs to be generated, and working with Cannabis at Work helps us to be part of that dialogue to enforce responsible use.
I was just looking at a video that you guys sent out. It's Dr. Blake Pearson, and the video, and we're going to put it up. It won't be on the Midas Letter, but I'll let you guys know where you can see it. It's the title of the video is Combating the Opioid Crisis and Reducing Polypharmacy with Medical Cannabis. Explain all that to me.
So one of the big hopes for cannabis is that it can be used as a substitute therapy to traditional molecular drugs. So we have a lot of patients that use a Strainprint app that are using it to get off antidepressants or anti-anxiety medications. We have people that are using it for, diabetic. We have people that are using it for a variety of other inflammatory diseases. This is really giving them the tools that they need so that they can get off those pharmaceutical drugs that perhaps have some bad side effects.
Exactly.
We're not saying it's a cure-all for everything, but we have noticed that in certain conditions it is a viable alternative that is much easier.
If you were on antidepressants or any kind of medication that had unknown long-term side effects, wouldn't you want to at least try a cannabinoid cousin, if you will, something just to give it a shot?
Yeah, and it's about how also can you use cannabis in combination with your other therapies? How can you live a healthier lifestyle by getting off more of those harmful or more aggressive side effect drugs?
Yeah.
And it's about overall improving quality of life.
It's funny because I really don't. I'm trying to think of what the side effect of marijuana for me is. Okay, once in a while I have 7-Eleven chicken. That's true. Anyway, side effects may include having 7-Eleven chicken. Here's some, all joking aside, let's talk about this. Your company, Strainprint, private company.
Yeah.
Any plans? Because this is an investment show, and a lot of the companies that we talk about on this show are publicly traded. But some of them started off like Strainprint.
Yeah, I mean, we're a privately owned company. We've been funded through venture funding, and we have plans to really go and dominate the industry in terms of providing demand-side analytics. We have a variety of solutions that power the publicly traded companies that we're talking about on this show. Licensed producers make use of data that's generated on our platform to better understand their consumers. Organizations like Health Canada also have stringent regulations over how you can represent your cannabis-derived products. We have experiential data directly from patients, and we're not under the same restrictions as a producer. So when we look at a product and its use, whether it's from someone like Aurora or Canna Farms or Emblem, Canopy Group, any of those, we're looking at it in terms of how are patients using it, to what effect are they receiving the best benefit, what are the actual side effects that patients are experiencing while using these products. And when we're looking at these products, we're not looking at 10, 20 uses. Typically, we'll have thousands and thousands of recorded interactions with these cannabis products from producers. And we also look at the way people's interactions change, not only from, Girl Scout cookie from Canna Farms versus Tilray. We're looking at how does that Girl Scout cookie product change from batch to batch, and does that have an impact on the patient experience?
And how does it change from person to person? But back to my question, any plans? Is this, was this, I know you, because I love how you kind of deftly took us there.
I took us on the curve.
You don't have to. You don't have to tell me. If it's a private company, it's a private company. None of your business, investment nerds.
I think
quit hassling Dave. He's my buddy.
When the right opportunity knocks, that's when you'll see us make a move. In the meantime, we're enjoying our current trajectory.
Well, listen, you came in here, you did a great job.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having us.
President and CTO. It's Chief Technology Officer. Strainprint Technologies Limited. Strainprint.ca is how you can get the app. It's available on Google, on the Play Store, on iOS. Just go get it. And here's the thing, even if you have just a passing interest in how cannabis works with you, you might be surprised. Remember what Dave mentioned, arthritis. I'm telling you, it's been so great for
golfing,
anti-inflammatory. I'm not talking about the psychotropic. I'm just talking about taking CBD and then with something as serious as Crohn's. I hope it helps.
So do I.
It's good seeing you, my friend.
Good to see you too.
Always
Thanks
a pleasure.
so much.
There's Dave Berg. All right, kids, up next, Ed will be talking to Steve Misener, but first, you may have heard about this. James will be broadcasting live from the LA YouTube studios tonight. Take a look at some of the guests he'll be talking to. Says tomorrow 1:30 for
household debt as 100% of GDP.
Joining me now, Steve Misener, veteran of Bay Street and man of all seasons, man for all seasons. Steve, you've done a lot of things on Bay Street and managed money. You've been on the show many times. Lots going on. It looks like the world's slowing down. It looks like it, and yet markets are close to their highs in the States.
Well, it's a cross current on the stock market because it certainly looks like the Fed tightening has maybe run its course prematurely based on what the Fed was saying, but that would be the case because of slower economic forecasts. Today they just revised the fourth quarter GDP from 2.6% down to 2.2%, and that's a big revision. And so that brings the year in last year at 3% for the whole year by one measure, although there are other measures that say it was 2.9%. It's getting crazy that there's actually different ways to calculate. But stocks like lower interest rates but lower interest rates can only fall, or rates can only fall when the economy is slowing, and that should lead to possibly lower corporate profits. So you've got this dichotomy that the market seems to be up a little today, even though the economic indicators are pointing to a slower. Part of it, though, is the U.S. dollar, and the U.S. is the safe haven, and this is compared to other economies around the world, and money flocks to the U.S. dollar and U.S. stocks.
You know, I wasn't that long ago, October, when the Fed chairman came on, and we're going to raise rates now, we're going to do it again. It was so hawkish, and then, like the world, we got the stock market got punished obviously at the end of last year. It's had a great run up, but what an about face! It really was dramatic. What is dramatic? So interest rates. I mean, the 10-year rate in the States has dropped precipitously here.
Yeah, I mean I think it's the 7-year bond in the States is the lowest since 2017. So I mean the yields have come down really dramatically, which is an about face from what the market was thinking. But whenever there's a new Fed chairman, it always seems to be, whether it was Yellen or Bernanke or people before them, Greenspan even, they always feel like they need to show their independence, and they show their independence by beating their chest and taking a gunslinger stand and saying, I'm the new sheriff in town, and no president or Congress is going to tell me what to do. Right. And so I'm going to show how tough I am, and the only way they can really show it is by being hawkish and aggressive on rates, and it usually leads to them overshooting what needs to be done, because the 4.2% that we had in GDP in Q2 last year was the high water mark, and clearly it was, and now the market's saying that they didn't need to tighten rates as much, and they certainly didn't need to scare the hell out of markets in December by not just the rate hike, but the forecast of future rate hikes for this year. And now to be even considering a neutral, if not a dovish stance of cutting rates is quite a turnaround in 90 days or 100 days. It's unbelievable, and it shows that they erred on the aggressive side, and now they got to talk their way out of it.
And while we're talking about interest rates, I see that the German 10-year went negative again. Yeah. For the first time since 2016 or something like that. But a lot of money now, a lot of this debt that's out there is yielding negative rates. Yeah. Well, I guess you don't yield negative rates. You pay. I still have a hard time getting around it. But what about the Canadian consumer? I guess the Canadian consumer's got some issues here. Like he's got lots of debt.
Yeah, the piece came out the other day. We can't put it up on the screen, unfortunately, but it shows of the G8 countries that Canada has the highest household debt as a percentage of gross domestic product or GDP. It's over 100%. Next closest is UK at 86, and getting down to, say, the US at only 78. So the Canadians consumer is carrying an awful lot of debt as a percentage of the size of our economy. I mean, they've been kind of drawn in with low rates. All these countries have been drawn into the borrowing side with low rates, and of course in Canada, kind of accentuated by a fairly hot real estate market in the major urban centers, not across Canada, but certainly the urban centers, and people having to borrow more to get into that and crack into the housing market. So that is a concern for consumers and for the economy, but also for the Canadian banking sector. Just keeping an eye on that. Hopefully it will have peaked out at this point.
Yeah, and we've seen, I mean, you mentioned real estate in major centers. Things have changed in Vancouver. Things have changed in Toronto, although the apartment building, the condo thing seems to be hotter than a firecracker.
It seems to still go. I mean, you look for, one of the key indicators for anyone wanting to follow the real estate market is the average number of days that a particular type of property stays on the market. Right. And the longer that it is, and I'm not sure where it's at, but I mean the idea that a condo comes up or a house comes up and it's a bidding war and it's gone in a few days, that's obviously peak type of action and pricing. It's been like that for a while. So if you start to see that there's a elongated, even by days or weeks, that listings are lasting, that's an indication that we've maybe crested out, but it's hard to say.
And with rates still low, if things do slow down, what kind of bullets do these central banks have? Like, are we running out of like trump cards? Like, you know, you just wonder, has there been just too much intervention?
Well, it's a bit of a treadmill, I suppose, because rates are so low that your question and your point is how low can they go, like a limbo rod when people are limbo dancing underneath it. Yeah. And is it stimulative to cut rates further? And when rates are already negative at the short end and now to the intermediate end at several countries around the world, you can't cut rates any lower when they're at zero. So that does reduce the flexibility of the central bankers, but we're in this kind of debt game where it has to be sustained at low rates, because clearly the slight raises, and I think we've had about 5 raises in Canada, and it's starting; those higher rates are starting to bite now, even at 1 3/4%.
I know, because of the big debt loads you alluded to.
Yeah, and so we need to see some, the fact that they're already starting to cut, I mean, it'll be a benefit to Canada if the U.S. feels that they need to cut, because that'll give us more breathing room than we've had, because we had to follow rate hikes lockstep, not so much because we had a heated economy, but because we got a 75-cent dollar. And if you don't follow the U.S. rate hikes, the dollar will drop, and that's inflationary. That imports inflation.
And so you know, look, it seems to me that things have slowed down in the world. We've had rates. You know, the Fed said no more rate increases this year, maybe 1 next year, and the stock market likes low rates. But is it low rates for the right, as you alluded to, for the right reason? In other words, are we slowing down? If we're slowing down, the market can't keep going up, can it?
Well, remember, all asset classes are a relative choice. It's not about something being necessarily absolutely attractive. This is so great, I have to own it, or it's about where do you put the money. And short-term money may go into treasury bills when investors are uncertain and the outlook is unclear. But if it's a zero return or negative return with these negative rates, money won't stay in there very long. It stays in there till it calms down, and then people look at other opportunities. So yield stocks will always continue to draw attraction if the dividends are safe, or the real estate investment trusts, they will benefit, and they have had a rally of late with the reversal in rates. But people will buy stocks if the bond market's not attractive. And right now the bond market's had its rally. It moved very quickly. And that's what's underpinning stocks, not so much the economic outlook being super rosy. But remember, we're not, it hasn't forecast recession in the U.S. It's just a slowdown. Yeah. Maybe it's 2 points this year, or 1.5 perhaps, rather than 3 last year. But it's still growth, and it's net real growth.
Yeah, very interesting, very interesting. You know, I don't know if you follow the company CannTrust. They reported they were supposed to, they were guiding 21 million revenue, and they actually guided about 16. I don't know if that's a one-off or if that's a trend. You've done some work recently on some trends in alcohol consumption and cannabis consumption.
Yeah, I was looking up. I just thought it was interesting because we are seeing in this attractive long-term really evolution of the cannabis industry, especially from being an underground industry to mainstream legalization, including in the U.S. State by state. Some stats I looked up were interesting, and they're really from 2006 and then updated to 2017, and the 2017 numbers are the latest that I could find. But they, for instance, daily users. Now, we're not talking about whether it's an abusive thing, particularly with alcohol, but I mean a daily user, someone who may have a drink on a regular basis. A daily user is defined as at least 300 days a year out of 365. So that's the definition. Noteworthy.
I'm a daily user.
The number one, like alcohol in 2017 is about 12 million Americans have a drink deemed to be a daily drinker at least 300 days a year, 12 million Americans. In 2006, for instance, the estimate for cannabis, and who knows because this is their best estimate, was 3 million daily users of cannabis in 2006. But that has tripled to almost between 8.5 and 9 million as of 2017. So we're seeing this ramp up, obviously with passages of legalization in the West Coast and California and Colorado. That would have been a major influence on that, certainly. But also it's the general bias and decline against alcohol use, and in some cases the view that cannabis use in moderation is perhaps a little healthier, or at least doesn't have the negatives that alcohol has. So it's interesting to watch that. And another couple of points say that 1 in 15 Americans have a drink deemed on a daily basis. Again, 300 days a year, 1 in 15, and that 15% of Americans use cannabis at least once a year. So I'm not saying that these trends are material to your investment decision. I was just looking up some of the trends, and I thought they were interesting. And the 15% of Americans who've used cannabis at least once in a year in 2017, that's up 10% from 2006. And obviously with edibles and vapes and things where you don't have to actually smoke it, which is going to be deemed to be a lower concern for consumption issues or health issues, we're seeing a continued climb in cannabis use, both from legalization and the ease of usage.
It'll be interesting. I'm wondering if liquor sales are starting to come off of it.
Well, just one last stat. In Canada, the per capita, that's not aggregate, but the per capita consumption of hard alcohol in Canada, guess what year that was, Ed? The peak in per capita alcohol. You have to think back to the...
I'm going to say 2005.
No, you have to think back to the days of the Mad Men TV show. Mad Men TV show. It was 1971. That was peak hard alcohol consumption in Canada. Then wine and beer came on after that.
I'm going to try and read this teleprompter. Thanks, Steve. We're going to move on here.
Legislation surrounding marijuana in the United States is complex. Despite marijuana being legal in many states, on the federal level, marijuana is still very much an illicit substance. Yesterday, the US House of Representatives Financial Services Committee approved legislation that would allow marijuana companies greater access to the US banking system. This means that the bill will advance to a vote on the House floor. With Democrats holding a majority in the House, the bill is likely to see enough support to progress to a vote in the Senate. Whether or not this bill will see enough support in the Republican-controlled Senate is not certain. While a number of banks are opening their doors to cannabis companies as more states move towards legalization, many remain reluctant to do so out of fear of violating federal money laundering or drug laws. As a result, many marijuana companies are forced to operate on a cash-only basis. Having access to financial services might be the first step to securing an air of legitimacy in this new and developing industry.
We talked about this. We talked about it. I gotta move this chair down now. Ed moved it up. Hang on. Oh, there we go.
I made it nice and warm for you. What?
Ed just sat here the entire time farting into this chair.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Ed I don't want to sit in Ed's fart stink, if that's okay.
Fart stink?
Anyway, can we get serious? Can we, excuse me, sir.
Please, I wish you would.
Thank you. You wish me what?
Wish you get serious.
I thought you said I wish you well. I'm like, great.
Yeah.
Okay, nerds, here we go. We spoke about this earlier in the show about with Ben talking about this House committee approving the marijuana banking bill. I want to get into this, and joining me now via Skype is Lee Hanna, Professor of Political Science at Wright State University. Professor, thanks for joining us today, and how are you? Hold on, Professor. Professor, hang on a second, because apparently everyone, hey, take a shot of the control room, because everyone in there is drunk. Hang on a second, Professor. We're Canadians. It's the Blue Jays home opener, and everyone who's working on the show is just hammered. Can I hear you now? I can hear you now. Professor Hannah,
okay.
Thank you for joining us on opening day.
Thank you.
I want to get into the, first of all, let's talk a little bit about what the marijuana banking bill is, what exactly we're talking about, and then we can talk about how it's going to affect marijuana going forward.
Sure. So this was a bill that was started in the House Financial Services and, came out with a pretty strong vote, 45 for and 15 against. So there was some bipartisan support to get this out now to the House floor. And primarily what it is trying to do is protect banks to hold money in the marijuana industry.
Right.
Historically, banks have been in violation of U.S. federal law if they do hold marijuana money, and even when entrepreneurs, whenever they the few banks that, or the few states that have changed the regulations, even there when marijuana industry goes through their process, they have to report it as a every time they bank with them, they have to report it as a legal activity. So it's just become a real mess, and it's made the industry here in the States a predominantly cash-only industry.
Right.
This means no credit card services, no loans for entrepreneurs, and a number of other aspects.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I know you will, but isn't part of the deal, I know they have to, the problem is they have to hold cash, and part of what's been an impediment to the, not just legalization, but companies getting involved, the impediment has been not being able to borrow money, not being able to conduct a business the way we do here in Canada. And so this House committee bill, is this a step, and then just a small step, I understand that, a step along the way to get these companies to be able to be registered and then to trade eventually, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, and as you mentioned, the ability to get a loan has been very prohibitive for many entrepreneurs. The latest I've seen is it takes about $250,000 US to start one of these industries, and that's not an impossible loan to get, but that's a lot of cash for any entrepreneur to have. And so you're right, this would clear a huge hurdle. It's a part of a broader blueprint from one of the main advocates for marijuana reform in the U.S. House, Earl Blumenauer, and it goes along with some other policies. But I believe I've read that this is only the third time that any kind of standalone marijuana reform has even made it out of a committee in the U.S. House. So that's a pretty big deal.
It is interesting, and when you think about, there's a lot, I think there's 11 states now that have some form of legalization, and yet federally there doesn't seem to be the appetite, or hadn't been until now. I want to introduce you to Ed. Ed, we were sort of talking, Ed, about a Republican versus a Democratic issue, and Ed's theory, you said something about Trump would get reelected, he might make marijuana legal. What do you think of that?
Well, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. A comment was made by one of the top financial guys in the country, and he just said, yeah, if Trump makes it legal, he's going to get back in power.
Elected.
Yeah.
Professor Hannah, what do you think of that?
I do think that he could win over some support if he would at least look towards descheduling the drug, and if marijuana were moved from Schedule 1 and put in a different schedule to where then it would have medical value. That would be just a really smart incremental step. It would allow for more medical testing. It would allow for the banks to be less fearful and everything else. And certainly, knowing where opinion is, especially youth vote, it could definitely help them at the margins with some people who maybe otherwise wouldn't vote, but would be excited about that at least.
Well, that's an interesting point, because we have, it became universally legal here last October, but it has been in stages of legality for some time. Specifically, the medical marijuana market. It has been around for several years, and maybe that's the stepping stone, as you say, getting it descheduled. Now, this particular reason that we're talking to, the marijuana banking bill, I don't know. I know this isn't your thing, but in terms of it being a stock market play sometime in the future, it's got to have huge ramifications.
Sure. I mean, this is a huge burgeoning industry, and it's one that is, I think there's increasing demand to really pull it out of the shadows, just from a pure capitalistic perspective, right. Let alone, there's a lot of momentum. If you've been watching recent state laws, there's been quite a bit of criticism that marijuana enforcement in the U.S. has historically really affected communities of color. And the current way that marijuana is financed favors white entrepreneurs, and so there's even a push kind of from communities of color that if you would open up the banking, open up the financial opportunities for minority investors, that could be a bigger win kind of across a number of coalitions that are trying to move this policy forward.
This fine gentleman with us today is Professor Lee Hanna, political science at Wright State University. And before we let you go, sir, Dayton, Ohio, I understand, is where you're at today.
That is correct, yes.
I want to ask two more things. Are you aware, or people in your circle of sphere of influence aware of the fact that Canada has legalized marijuana? Is that something you are aware of? I know some people are.
Yes, yeah. I think that there is some awareness, and in American politics research, we talk about the pressures that occur when border states adopt a policy. That other states may sense either that they're missing out on revenue, or that they're just kind of dealing with the spillover effects of a policy. So there has been some talk that by Canada, moving forward towards a more liberal legalization policy, that is going to add pressure in the U.S., particularly in the states on the border.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's funny you say border, because going back and forth, as we do a lot here in Canada, back and forth to the States. I don't know about you, Ed, but I've been back and forth a few times since legalization, and all we do is lie. We just lie.
Yeah.
Have you had any contact with marijuana in the last? No. What are you speaking of? What? Marijuana?
What?
Anyway, how about this? You can give us a little lesson in U.S. politics. Let me just move this. So it's the House committee.
Mm-hmm.
Now what happens? It gets. Does it need approval by Congress and the Senate? After, how far down the road is legalization from what happened today?
It's a great question. So this will now go to a floor vote in the U.S. House of Representatives, the lower chamber, and it is likely to pass unless there's some unforeseen kind of movement. There were a number of legislators that tried to push some amendments forward that kind of got shot down. This should go to a floor vote. Given that the Democrats have the numbers, it should get approved, and then it goes to the Senate. Our upper chamber, which is in Republican control.
Right.
There is one Republican senator, Cory Gardner, out of Colorado, representing the first state to legalize recreational. Yep. He's been very vocal in support of, we need to get this policy at the federal level kind of on board, because there are a lot of Republican legislators now in states with medical or recreational marijuana, and they're just exhausted of this song and dance with the federal government. So there will be at least some Republican support, but, as far as broad support yet in the Republican Party, I don't know, what the future holds in the Senate. It will probably get amended to some level if it does get through, passed back down to the House, and then if all that occurs successfully, it would go to the president's desk. And I think Trump would probably sign this. That would be my hunch. I don't think Trump himself is much of a prohibitionist, as much as sometimes his Department of Justice seems to be.
Okay. Well, in the end, and we're no different, in the end it all comes down to who's going to make money off this. And well, no, it's true. It's at some point in the history of this in the States, it will be somebody made a deal There was an opportunity. Somebody saw the opportunity for growth, for market growth, and for jobs. And at the end, that's what will get it through.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's been a long game here, but it does seem like the momentum's really picked up.
Well, you know, yesterday we had a 29-year-old CEO of $1 billion weed company on, and Ed and I were like, how old is this kid? And we're thinking the same thing now. How are you a professor? You're like 20. How old are you?
I am 37.
Oh, please. 37?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Grow up.
Good for you.
Good for you. Hey, Lee Hanna.
What's
that, sir?
What's that?
Well, we're all just yelling over each other. Lee, thanks very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Lee. You're a good man. That's Lee Hanna, the professor, Department of Political Science.
Yeah.
He knows what he's talking about. All right.
Yeah. Political science. Political science. Is that sort of an oxymoron? You know what I mean? What science is there in politics? Like, really?
I don't know, man. You know, why you asking me so many questions?
I'm talking to myself.
Hey, let's talk charts. The markets are closed.
Okay, markets are closed. Thursday's come and gone.
Who?
Thursday.
Thursday's done.
And you know, I got to point out that CannTrust closed under $11, under 11.
Wow.
So it was down about $2.50. It took it. It took it good.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was a big drop. And then Canopy's down another 60 cents today. Let's put up weed.
Let's put up some weed here.
I want to show
because I know that's you know, one of the interests of the people watching. Midas Letter.
Yeah.
Have a look here. Have a look here. Over here.
See how long it's going to take. Is it going to take me?
Okay, count down to charts in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Bang.
Boom.
Bang.
There you go.
Now look, we got now this is getting interesting here.
This is
from
canopy growth.
We are now below the Bollinger Band here.
What does that mean? Does everyone know except for me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Everybody knows except for you.
That's fine. I don't give a shit.
But there's two bands here. There's the Bollinger Bands are basically bands that are devised with a formula that basically say 99% of the time a stock will trade within a range.
That's the Bollinger Band.
That's the Bollinger Bands, invented by John Bollinger. Famous book.
Okay.
John Bollinger on Bollinger Bands.
Bollinger Bands.
Yeah, John Bollinger.
Okay.
Anyway, we're now below the Bollinger Band.
Where is the Bollinger Band?
Well, you see, there's two yellow bands. There's one. Okay, that's one. Here's another one.
Oh, okay. And now it's trading below that.
And usually that means it's out of range, out of the range, which means it should go back into the range.
Let's get her.
If you're going to buy, if you like weed and you really want to be in it long term, this might be a reasonable entry point, because if they go below the bands, as they've done here, they usually go back into the bands, and we're kind of oversold, it looks like a bit, although I don't like the fact that it's doing this. That looks like a limp sausage.
Ed, Ed, can you maybe stop drawing dick charts? Dick charts, private eye.
You know, you heard of Dick Tracy? Dick charts.
And now with the news, here's Dick charts, private eye.
Okay. Jesus, Howard. There's two words here. There's the how and the ed.
This Bollinger Band you're talking about, is it also used for exercise?
It's used.
You know, you
I hear you. I hear you. Yeah, that's a different kind of band.
So why isn't this an opportunity?
Well, what I don't like about this. What I don't like about this.
Have a look at the chart again.
Here we go. Here we go.
Here comes Ed in the chart.
We've had this long period here where we've sort of based, okay? And that might be construed to be distribution because we're now rolling over. And usually after we got that, anyway, I'm drawing it again.
All right.
Look at this. It's nice and straight.
Wow.
And then you got this.
Okay.
It's a faucet. Anyway.
Is it really?
That's what they call it. So if it broke this way, okay, let's say with this like that, I'd be saying, hey, this is a time to buy.
Okay.
The fact that it's breaking down after this longer period here of a couple of months of distribution, it might be the beginning of a new trend. So I'm a little cautious, especially when I hear companies like CannTrust miss significantly on their revenue.
Yeah, that's been the topic of discussion. I saw an email that went around earlier this morning about CannTrust, and people have been, they're talking about it. But if you're a Canopy growth fan, and Canopy as a stock, would this not, as you say, the Bollinger Band, but if you start to look at it as a long-term investment rather than try and get a bagger, maybe you look at it as a buy, hold, and see where it goes kind of play.
Yeah. Well, I'm sort of waffling here because I'm getting the sense that the valuations are far in excess of the fundamentals. In other words, what they're reporting and what they're saying what the market's saying it's worth, there's such a spread that I'm thinking I'm going to wait for some more of this to narrow.
Okay.
Okay.
But didn't you say when everyone is running from the fire,
right.
That's when you throw gasoline?
I know, but it's not that simple.
No.
It's not 1 and 1's equal to 2. This is art more than it is science. Really? I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now listen, everything I've learned about the markets came from you, so.
Well,
I just, whatever you want to tell me there.
You keep telling me you don't know anything.
Obi Ed Kenobi.
Obi Ed Kenobi.
Hey guys.
Okay.
Up next, the CEO of Tinley Beverages will be joining us via Skype. But first this.
The Tinley Beverage Company is a Canadian-based company with operations in the United States. The company makes liquor-inspired, alcohol-free, cannabis-infused beverages for use in California. It also manufactures the Hemplify product line, which is available in retail locations in California as well as online in the U.S. Tinley intends to leverage consumer and operational learnings in California to launch operations in Canada and Nevada, followed by other territories. The Tinley Beverage Company trades on the CSE under the ticker symbol TNY.
Sorry. I apologize, sir. I have an 80-year-old horny farting man next to me. I'm trying to be a professional. I'm sorry, Rick.
Where are you, Ricky?
Rick, we're talking to Rick in California, are we not?
Yes, you are, gentlemen. It sounds like we're having a good time.
Yeah. You know what? We're trying to have a good time. Why not? Ed and I are not going to live forever. Let's talk about some news. You completed your planned expansion of the bottling facility in the Coachella Valley to produce your great-tasting cannabis-infused beverages. Do you mind if I ask you a question before we get to the technical stuff?
Absolutely.
Can we just talk a little bit about, because in Canada we have not yet had the cannabis-infused beverage, although I know other companies are starting to think about it. What does it taste like? What's the effect like? And is it like an edible? And how is it different than an edible?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, edibles are, they're fast-growing for sure, but there's a little bit of consumer confusion. A lot of times folks will have a bite of a brownie or a gummy and they don't feel anything. And there's a little bit of consumer education that's necessary because edibles have to go through your digestive tract. And it takes approximately 45 minutes to an hour to actually start feeling the onset of an edible. Now, if you compare that to beverage acts just like alcohol. It's digested right through the liver and goes right to your bloodstream at a quicker onset. That's the fundamental difference between an edible and a THC-infused beverage. So
you're saying, if I may interject, so it's when you ingest it with the beverage, it's more predictable, perhaps, and quicker.
That's the goal, and that's exactly what we have done with our new science and technology that we've been vetting over the last, call it 2 months, through 13 different science companies, ranging from nano-emulsification to dose sugar. We have nailed the recipe for our formula for our Tinley beverages, where not only do we deliver on a great tasting product, but you'll have to try our margarita-like product called High Lime, or our Moscow Mule product, which is named High Horse. They deliver on two very important fundamentals for great beverage. One, it needs to taste really good.
Right.
And we have got a recipe that delivers on that. We're using some real great flavorist and science that comes out of the beverage alcohol space. So we use a lot of the same ingredients that are used to make the alcoholic drinks that most people are quite familiar with. So we've got a great tasting product, and through the nano-emulsification technology that we're using, we're getting an onset. Initially, you feel it in about 5 minutes, with full effect in that 15 to 20 minute time frame, with a duration that lasts close to 2 hours from the initial
and again, not having seen a bottle of your great tasting Tinley's cannabis-infused beverages, all of that, what I'm trying to get to is all of those effects obviously are on the bottle. Are some bottles have more effect, less effect? You know what I'm saying? Like, is there a similar analogy to a glass of wine has 14% alcohol, a shot of vodka has 40%?
Well, obviously, the more THC milligrams you consume, the stronger the effect. But it's important to distinguish, in our portfolio, most of our drinks are going to be geared toward a more uplifting, called sativa effect. So you kind of have two choices when you add your terpenes. One's going to have a sativa, more uplifting, kind of giggly type effect. It's euphoric. And then some drinks, you know, when we launch products that are more like bourbon and cognac, are probably going to have more of a chilling effect where you want to be more creative and relaxing. That's going to use an indica-type terpene. But the idea is to really replace what people look for in inebriation through a beverage alcohol. A similar experience can be derived through THC. And we look to exploit more often than not the sativa effect, and we use a special blend of Pineapple Express with Jack Herrera, and we do a custom blend working with a very, very well-respected terpene company to have a special blend proprietary to Tinley Beverage Company that we use in our drinks.
Well, I got to tell you, Rick, as somebody that doesn't drink alcohol, I can't wait. I really can't. I started reading about your company and, as I say, a few others that are in this space. And, you know, it really is another part of this revolution that's happened here in Canada and is eventually going to be happening all over America. And we certainly appreciate you taking some time with us today, okay?
Well, it is my pleasure. You basically took a page out of our founder's vision. He likes the taste of alcohol, not the effect.
No, exactly. All the best to you, sir, and take care. Hope to see you when you're in Toronto sometime. I guess he's gone. You know, the audio wasn't.
No, it wasn't great. It's a little. No, you know, I don't know. I know I met the founder of Tinley. Okay, I met him. He's a Toronto capital markets guy. Okay, and I met him, and we had a long chat. I think they got a great idea. I think they got a great product.
I do too. I think it's a. I think as I, you know, when you look at some of the things they're making, and I don't know when that will come to Canada, where you can have a cannabis-infused margarita or maybe a beer type of thing. You know, that's just another part of this sort of. I'll tell you what. In 5 years, you're going to go into a liquor store or whatever, the weed store, and it's going to have so much there. We don't even know what they're going to have. I talked to Dave from Strainprint earlier, Dave Berg. He was telling me that. I don't know if you know, there's like hemp-infused CBD creams, anti-inflammatories, and now there's going to be, you know, options for people that don't want to drink. I think it's so exciting because there's going to be so many of those things, some of which we haven't even figured out yet.
Yeah, you know, they came out a study today. They said if you drink a bottle of wine a week, I think that's what they said. Yeah, that's just as harmful as smoking 10 cigarettes a week. That's what they said. Now, I don't know if they're right.
I don't know.
I'm just saying that this alcohol thing ain't the best thing in the world.
Well, I'm telling you, when I hear people talk about a bottle of wine a week, it's useless.
Are you kidding me? How about a bottle of wine an hour?
Like, dude, I remember having this conversation with somebody. I'm like, it's like a glass of wine. What is a glass of wine for?
Duh.
What is it for?
Sissies.
Why does it even exist?
Yeah, a glass of wine.
Did I do this joke last time when I was here? That somebody asked me how I knew I had a drinking problem. And I said, because one day I had a glass of wine and I thought, what would go well with this? And the answer I came up with was vodka. Did I do that joke? I don't know. I'm stoned.
You know, they ask you if you want a 6 ounce or a 9 ounce.
Yeah.
Who says 6?
Somebody. Anyway.
They're going to change that to, would you like a 9 or an 18 ounce glass, please?
So there's Rick Gillis, Tinley Beverage Company. That's cool. Here's what's coming up on tomorrow's show. You guys ready for this? Big show tomorrow.
What's coming on tomorrow?
Look at this.
What? Toronto?
It's a picture
Toronto's
of the skyline. Tomorrow we'll look at the city of Toronto. Benjamin Smith, lead financial writer. He'll be back, of course. Peter Miller, the CEO of Slang Worldwide. Hey, you guys, how quickly did you book Terry Donnelly? That's really cool. Now, there's a guy, the CEO of Hill Street Beverage Company. He's in that space. That company, like Tinley, is going to start producing cannabis-infused products.
Wow.
For people to drink.
Well, if you took pot and you just put it in water and drank the water, would that work?
Yeah, it works great. Try it. I got nothing. We got anything else? Any final? I know we're like a few minutes early here because we had some audio problems there, and I think the whole show has been. This has been fantastic.
I'm gonna sneeze here in a minute. I gotta be careful.
Hang on. If this is gonna, has this ever happened on Midas Letter RAW?
Midas Letter RAW.
Ed's about to. What's that? Oh yeah, we can end early. Ricky says we can bail here anytime. Ed's gonna sneeze, and we're gonna say goodbye.
I don't want to sneeze in public.
Really?
You know.
Connell? Is that his name? Connell? Donald, Connor, Simon, and Ricky. On behalf of all of us, to all of you, all the best. Happy investing.